I think that quantum physics can make you a good person because, there's a cause and effect, right? So whatever you do, you're going to, what goes around comes around does work in the quantum field world, right? So what I'm saying is that we can actually justify that through science now, that, you need to live life with integrity. You can't take responsibility of my action. I can't take responsibility of your action, right? But if everybody, let's say that is one of my goals, right? Let's say if my book becomes a conduit for people to become aware of this binary world, but become aware of how your action is creating your reality. My gift for humanity is that I have written a book, The Quantum Being, and if anybody agrees with what I just shared, they can definitely get a copy from Amazon.
Hello. Today, I'm happy to present you an amazing author, beautiful woman. She is a rocket scientist. She is the author of Quantum Being, quantum coach, and a spiritual alchemist. Wow. Never heard before something like this. So, please meet Shehnaz Soni.
Thank you, Dr. Leon, for such a beautiful introduction. Yeah, I love that I can converge science and spirituality, and that's why I'm here to share exactly that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shehnaz. And I'm really happy you joined my podcast because it was my dream to talk to you. After I was reading your book, I even couldn't stop for a couple of days to read this because it was amazing. But I would like to hear from you why people should read your book. What is something unusual there?
The main reason people should read my book so that they can make other channels more accessible to them, because I have been running into a lot of people who feel that they are stuck and they're not able to move forward. This book basically shares that how incredible a human craft we are. And when you use the quantum being principle, which pretty much means when you recognize the aspect of your existence that is all continuously changing, then it opens the door for you to embrace the new you in every moment.
Wow, very exciting. So this book, for me, it's a treasure of wisdom. This is about life. This is about happiness. This is about suffering. And all these together within one single book. And what I can tell you, that when I was reading, it started from your story, from your childhood. And then somehow I found myself in a totally different world, in a spiritual world, in a quantum physics world. And I even didn't recognize this transformation. I never was reading something like this before. And I'd like to ask you about interesting questions. So you started your book from 4 very good words. ICPR. Could you tell me more about it?
I know. Isn't it interesting? Because, you use a CPR, right? When someone is dying. And every time when my soul died, I use the ICPR. And as an engineer, we use acronym. And it just happens to be the fact that, I for intuitive, right? C for courage, P for perseverance, and R for resilience. And it's interesting because, I had those attributes as my characteristics, because we all have characteristics, because we all have attributes, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, right? So it's like if you can recognize a certain attributes that you carry, then you can leverage that, especially when you're in a situation that's not aligning with your soul, right? So it just so happens that my acronym was ICPR, and it makes it easier to convey that I had to resuscitate my soul through those attributes that I already have. And it's almost like I wanted to master them by going through that journey.
Wow. So let's skip a little bit your childhood and get directly to your understanding of our world and how you present your understanding and your feeling of your work like engineer and like a spiritual master. So you are NASA engineer. So every day you make design. By the way, I was just, it blew my mind when I was reading things like design should have future action embedded into it. Wow. This is what I wrote on my on my wall, because I'm an engineer as well. And so, yeah, design should embed future action. Why?
Because journey is intertwined with the destiny, right? So every single thing that we do, we are going somewhere, right? It's like a snake and ladder game, right? So either we're going, if the snake, right, hits you and then you go down, and the ladder hits you, go up. And it's funny that you play that child game, and basically it has all the wisdom encompassed in how your action, everyday action, is either adding something in your life or deleting something in your life. And as long as you make a conscious choice, it becomes a very beautiful quantum dance. For me right now, dwelling into my engineering world keeps me stimulated, keeps me sharp, keeps me on the top, because I'm working on a state-of-the-art program. I'm working with the cream of the crops people. We're using all the tools that are one of the most, highly sought after tools like model-based system engineering. So it kind of is a good way. It's almost like, you have to maintain your health, right? You have to make sure that you maintain your health. It's like you have to maintain your mind. And for me right now, that work is kind of maintaining my mind, because I would want to retain that, because there's a reason I'm where I am today. And I would like to continue growing and continue evolving, right? So how am I going to do that if I don't respect what I've already have and then keep building on top of it?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So you're talking about life as a pattern, rather as a fractal. So how you present life as a fractal? So as I understand, this is why you talk about quantum life. So it's somehow corresponding to the pattern of our life, flowers of life. You're talking a lot about this stuff in your book. And how is it possible to consider our life from quantum point of view? Because we're living in a mechanical, in a Newtonian world. And how this world just connected to your quantum understanding and your quantum feeling, what to do and how to behave.
So when you look at the world from a classical physics perspective, then you feel limitation. You feel things are whatever they are, and it's hard to break the pattern, right? You feel a little bit imprisoned in a way, if I have to really be honest, right? When you look at it from a quantum perspective, then you see that everything is in motion. Every single thing actually is in motion. Earth is continuously moving with respect to the sun and so forth. We are continuously moving because we are standing on Earth. Plus, we are at the subatomic level made of quarks and leptons, which is also moving. So when you start looking at it from the quantum physics perspective, it just gives you more freedom, and it liberates you from wherever you are, so you can actually move forward wherever you want to go, right? So that to me is the only reason I have made this far. If I would have followed the classical physics point of view, I would have never been able to get out of my traditional future that was given to me, right? By my traditions, by my culture, by my religion, by my family. And I know a lot of people right now, and I look at them, they followed exactly the script that was given to them by their family. And they have a life, and I mean, they have a life that is very different than mine, right? And the type of soul that I was born with, I would have never been content if I would have followed that script.
Yeah, right. I agree. So it looks like because we are built out of atoms and all these quantum elements, quantum forces just keep us alive and keep us in our time-space dimensions. But Donald physicist Donald Hoffman, he created a agent, conscious agent notion, conscious agent, and how they connect to each other and how they interfere with each other. You touched this subject in your book. Could you just elaborate more about how we interfere with each other and how quantum foundation of our being influence on this interference?
Right. Because that's why when you use the word like, butterfly effect or ripple effect, all of those or 100 monkey effect, right? All of those are highlighting the fact that at the quantum level, we're all interconnected through the quantum field. And therefore, when you talk about the golden rule or law of cause and effect, or even Newton's third law of motion, all of those are saying the same thing. So it's almost like, when some people need religion, right, to be a good person. Actually, I think that quantum physics can make you a good person because, there's a cause and effect, right? So whatever you do, you're going to, like, what goes around comes around does work in the quantum field world, right? So what I'm saying is that we can actually justify that through science now, that you need to follow, you need to live life with integrity, because there is that accountability that's a built-in feature that creates that sacred geometry in the form of flower of life, right? When you do everything right, then it looks like beautiful flower of life. When you don't, it doesn't.
Yeah, maybe our audience is not aware about what is it flower of life. Could you talk about it a little bit more? I would love to hear as well.
The flower of life pattern basically kind of is the pattern that has been found in many Asian places, including Egypt. When you go to Abydos temple in Egypt, which I personally did go, and there's flower of life pattern atomically embedded, right? So it's not something you can wipe off because it's not done by any kind of material that's something you can remove, which speaks volume that how important that pattern was for them, right? And it's embedded in Abydos temple. You have to go all the way down and you see it. And it's also found in many different places, like all over the world, right? And what it depicts a pattern of consciousness. So anybody who has studied Kabbalah basically is a study of tree of life, right? Now, the tree of life is actually a subset of flower of life. So I became aware of this whole learning and understanding when I was teaching Kabbalah more than 11 years ago.
Wow.
In my town. And that's when because I always like to know like a larger perspective. So I wanted to know what is tree of life. And then that's what got me to flower of life, because I was wanting to understand that what is beyond tree of life. And what flower of life depicts is that, when you exist, so let's say when consciousness exists, it wants to interact. And because it wants to interact, it makes the Venn diagram in math, and you can call it Vesica Pisces in ancient language. As soon as it overlaps the two circles, what happens is, as soon as we interact, like as soon as you and I interact, we have created a dynamic, which is called Vesica Pisces. As soon as you create a Vesica Pisces, that dynamic creates another interaction, and then it creates a triangle. And what happens, the flower of life is basically a pattern that keeps on multiplying circle by circle, and then it ends up getting to the point where it becomes a representation of a seed of life, which actually is a depiction of how we come into existence from in the embryo. So and then not only that pattern, that the embryo pattern, the seed of life pattern, and also the binary math, which pretty much is used in every aspect of our existence, because ultimately everything boils down to 0 and 1, is also following the exact same pattern as flower of life. And then that is connected to how, in math, we can represent the exact same thing with Fibonacci sequence. And then when you take the ratio, it becomes the phi ratio. So it's very beautiful how flower of life picks up like a chain, all of these concepts that people have heard it, but they don't know that how they're all connected with the exact same pattern.
Yeah, and actually what kind of pattern just appears in my mind? If we take the world and we perceive this world, and so we make decision based on this perception, because I just keep that based on perception. We have some values, and we create principles, we create worldview, we create rules to follow these principles. It sometimes becomes even experience. It becomes our habit. I just want to skip it. So let's think about triangle: word, perception, decision, and action back to this word, changing this word. And if we have many people just interfere each other, all these actions become some waves, right? So what do you think from quantum point of view, quantum being point of view? How it's possible to manage to navigate inside this huge information space?
So one of the things that we all have to do is take responsibility of our own action, right? Because, you can't take responsibility of my action. I can't take responsibility of your action, right? But if everybody, let's say like that is one of my goals, right? Like, let's say if my book becomes a conduit for people to become aware of this binary world, but become aware of how your action is creating your reality, then what happens if you do everything with integrity and with an intention that supports the love or multiplies the love in the world? Then what happens is that now you've planted a seed, and that's going to grow into love, right? If you do the same, you can use the same principle and multiply fear, because you have the power to do both. Yep. And you can do that too. And we have already seen that what we see in the world right now is a lot of projection of fear. It's a very fear-based world that we live in. And that actually surprises me more than ever, because, most of the world is very religious. And religion already tells you that there's more to the story than yourself, right? There is a God, there's a powerful being. So then why people get so fearful? Because to me, that makes no sense, because, it almost is contradictory. And I'll give you an example. Even in my town, when we had this whole pandemic was happening and everybody was so fearful, and my town is very predominantly Christian. So I actually did some public speaking in the middle of courthouse, and I made a point that most of you are Christian, which means that you should not be so fearful with the virus. Like, why are you giving virus more power than the God, right? So it was very interesting, because they were like, wow, that's a great question she's asking. And so it comes back to that we all know that we're all connected. We all know that we can affect each other. So why not we affect each other with love? Because it helps us to be loving. Because when you love someone, you feel good. When you hate someone, you don't feel good. So that to me is a very simple way to gauge your action, through your own feeling, through your heart.
Yeah, so you have to create the wave of love instead of wave of fear.
Exactly, because everything multiplies in the universe. So why not multiply something that actually makes you feel good, and it also helps other people feel good? Because then it becomes a win-win situation.
Do you apply this thinking in your everyday job in NASA? How it looks like to apply this spiritual work, and how it does help you to manage your real world?
Yeah, it's very interesting because for example, I went to NASA Kennedy Space Center last week, and it was all about talking about multiple element integration tests that we're going to have to perform before we have the woman live on the dark side of the moon, right? So we were talking about how are we going to do that, because we have lots of different players, right? We have SpaceX making a Starship, then we have a Boeing making a Space Launch System rocket, then we have Lockheed Martin making the Orion capsule that astronaut is going to be inside. And we have to make sure everybody talks to everybody and there's no problem during docking and all that stuff. And it was very interesting how in the meeting, there was about 50 people in the room. And there were times, because, there were focals for Orion, focals for, SpaceX. And there were times they were kind of like arguing with each other or getting mad at each other because somebody didn't say something to each other and all that. And I actually, it was not even my place to say anything like that. But because I kind of found an opportunity, I would basically say that don't we all want to make sure that we have built the right things? So we are all here to validate what we are building in order to make sure that the mission Artemis 3 becomes successful. So if we all have the same goal, then why not we work together in a way that we can get to that goal? We should always keep the goal in mind. So I started giving my speech like I would do in any day. And it was very interesting because it was definitely out of place for me to say that because I was not the one leading the meeting. But I could see that everybody was listening to me. And I'm the only Pakistani girl. I mean, there were only 6 women and 50 people. So you can just see the demographic, right? It was more men. And then out of all the women, all of them are white except me, right? So I'm already an oddball. And plus my accent is so prominent that every time when I speak, people notices me, right? So they're they're all and it was I just said it. I'm don't we all agree that we want to build the right thing? Because that's the definition of validation. And then I'm so if we all agree that we want to build the right thing, then what are we fighting for? We need to fight for the same cause, right? So it's good that we are on here and we're finding out all these discrepancies because was the whole reason we have this technical interchange meeting.
Yeah, I think we have to apply this everywhere. So we have to find...
Because I say that, we want to live on a moon, but we can't even get along on Earth. So I always kind of so that's how I actually interject at my work is people are always lost in the among the trees. And I bring the perspective of the forest. I bring the larger perspective, right? So that's how I usually kind of break that pattern. And they can just see that I'm always looking at things from a very different perspective.
So I think even in such level like NASA, people are looking for how to run out something instead of to run to something. And this is just embedded into our brain. So instead, as you said, we have to embed future actions in our brain, but we actually embedded past actions in our brain and keep it for a whole life. Thank you very much. It was amazing conversation. Do you have some words to our audience? I don't know. You decide what kind of good words you can say to our audience.
Well, I would say that we all are doing our best to stay and exist in this world, despite of the challenges of being in this confined body, and despite of the challenges of what's happening in the world at the global level, despite of the fact that we have a lot of personal things that we have to do day to day. My gift for humanity is that I have written a book, The Quantum Being, and if anybody agrees with what I just shared, they can definitely get a copy from Amazon. And if they like what I share, because what I'm doing now is that I actually just did my book in my voice in audio. So it's an audible version. It's also available.
Wow.
Yeah. And I also am planning on kind of offering, little courses here and there as I get a chance. So if people like to learn anything from me, then they can just sign up on my website, which will enable them to get the an indication whenever I'm teaching online classes. So those are the ways I'm serving humanity, through my book, through my teaching. And whenever I get an opportunity to have a conversation like we just had, because we all have to do our part. And and show up the best way we can for ourselves and for others.
Thank you, Shehnaz. So we have met with author of Quantum Being book. It's all about life, happiness, and quantum. Yeah. Thank you very much, Shehnaz. It was amazing meeting you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.